Now, SQL, Microsoft handles very differently. Some of the rules are the same, like the migration time. It's still 180 days, so you can use it on and in the cloud to migrate there within 180 days. On the same side, also migration back to on-prem possible, but be wary of the reassignment rights of your licenses, which is always 90 days. But there's no charge for usage of Azure data services. You will still pay for the cost of the compute, storage, and backup, etc. But basically, the SQL cost is reduced from the Azure consumption. You cannot assign licenses to Azure and an on-prem server or hosted SQL server unless it's for the migration, as I said earlier. So it's either in the Azure cloud or on your own premises. There's no rules like with Windows Server that the data center license allows you to use it both on-prem or in the cloud. Now, Microsoft uses the same rule here as well for the SQL Proctor Core license grant that they had back in the day. It's different from Windows Server. It's 4 cores per VM. So 4 core licenses per VM, sorry. So you need an 8 cores per VM. There's a table on the left-hand side that shows exactly what your options are here. So if you want to start an Azure SQL database and you have SQL Server Enterprise Core licenses, one of your cores that you have licensed with software assurance allows you to cover 4 virtual cores of the SQL database in Azure. Meaning, if you run an 8 vCore SQL database in Azure, you would need 2 licenses for SQL Enterprise Core license. That being said, SQL Server Standard is possible as well. The ratio is different, as you can see. If you were to license it with SQL Server Standard, and you would like to cover your Azure SQL database with Azure Hybrid Benefit, the ratio is 1:1. So 1 core license equals 1 vCore. Now, if we look at SQL Server as an example here on what this would look like from a savings perspective, I've taken a simple SQL Server database in Azure, the Western Europe pricing, and I've looked at an 8 vCore database. That's an average spend in Azure of 1,300 or so euros. And this is just with all costs included. So this includes the SQL cost. If you take out the SQL cost of this database, the price will drop significantly to 826 euros per month, meaning there's a definite benefit there. If you total this up, and this is an always-on SQL database, you are looking at a 15,000, almost 16,000 annual spend for the Azure SQL cost if you run it mainly and only in Azure. If you use Azure Hybrid Benefit, you will be spending around 13,200 euros, which means that on an annual basis, you're able to save almost 2,600 euros on your SQL database. So that might not sound like a lot right now, but if you're running tens, 20, hundreds of databases, for instance, that can be significant money on a yearly basis. Now, what I will cover in the next slide is that it might sometimes make sense to purchase on-premises licenses to cover the Azure Hybrid Benefit. So invest in on-premises licenses to reduce cost within Azure. It might sound strange, but it's actually true. For SQL, it might not generally make sense to do that, but your existing software assurance entitlements will definitely go far here. So it will save you significant cost. Note that if you have the option to license all your SQL Server estate in a server and cloud enrollment, your price of your SQL Server licenses will drop significantly as well. And that will have an effect again on how much money you're able to save. These prices are all list pricing. So if you have significantly reduced SQL Server prices, software assurance prices in your EA, for instance, or you're another level A customer but a level D customer, the difference will only grow because Azure pricing across the board, level A to D for Microsoft is the same, but Microsoft still differentiates on the on-premise license portion.